Well, good morning. I'm Gary from Lantana Removal, Queensland. 0449 986 880. We operate out of Narangba in Queensland, and we go all over the states from there. So basically, I had an interesting conversation from Brisbane City Council yesterday, I think it was, where my very large file as it stands found its way onto somebody else's desk after I wrote to the Lord Mayor. Now this is directly to the Lord Mayor. Basically that gentleman was supposed to have sent me his details, contact details, which I don't think he was very keen to do, so that I didn't have to keep pestering you directly, but this seems to be the only way that any action ever happens, okay? There's a bit of a misconception that I'm approaching the councils from the point of view of taking on a job to do work competing with other people that are supposedly in a system that doesn't exist, okay? That conversation with the gentleman that did call me indicated that I had a very large file there with a great deal of information in it, which would be correct. Now, in those discussions, we have a situation where I am the only person who has the knowledge within Lantana, okay, within our country. Okay, I've been eradicating it for just on 40 years, and basically I can operate in terrains up to 30 degrees and higher than that in specialty gear and specialty operations. Now basically I'm a consultant and I am a lobbyist now, okay? There's no other way to put this, because no other avenue is going to change this material within our state, within our shire. Now I understand that gentleman refocused the attention to say, no, we haven't written off large areas of Brisbane or of our state. But the fact is, in that discussion, it was turned around to be, but no, we're focusing our attentions on other areas and looking after those areas, which realistically means exactly the same thing. Areas have been completely written off and completely abandoned. Now, I have a great deal of information where I was told that there was zero operations in Lantana, and it doesn't matter how we move forward from here. If I have to resort to freedom of information to get the details of how this has been handled prior to this, it's only going to highlight extensively exactly how bad this has been dealt with and how dishonestly it's been dealt with. Okay, our operations in being able to map out Lantana environments and target acquisition of high value targets is unique. It doesn't exist anywhere else throughout the country. So you basically have to look at the procedures as it stands, that the DAF, the DPI, the rest of the state government has no operational ability within Lantana, and nor does the councils. Okay, in the last 10 years, you guys have doubled the infestation levels, okay? And I patiently listened to the stuff that I was told about zero operations in it, and anyway, we've got other people that can do the work, so you won't be very high on the list anyway, because you're a troublemaker. But that has gotten us to where we have 10 million plus hectares of Lantana, and we're not going to go much more before very serious action is taken to start to deal with Lantana. You know, it went from Brisbane City Council's the most wealthiest council, or one of the most wealthiest councils in the country, but has no money to put into this Lantana now, according to the gentleman that called me. Now, this is not a case of me being easily, put off from my mission to defend my country and defend my ecology from these onslaughts of all of these weeds. I totally accept that there's other weeds out there that the council, identifies as being even worse, but they're doing such a terrible job on all levels of weeds that this cannot be allowed to continue on the basis that it is, because there are now supercells with Lantana now of 5 and 6 different weeds moving with them. So basically what I am publicising this for is as a lobbyist to the government. That's not only the councils, that's to the federal government and to the state government. We will not be continuing this. It's going to get very, very uncomfortable from this point on, because the information being passed on to the general public is going to be much more poignant to specific targeted areas. And that is one of the places that the councils are going to really very quickly dislike what's happening to them. There is that much material out there to be filmed. I now have such a large Facebook community now, and the shares are absolutely incredible across the whole of the country. So there are very little places for any of the councils to hide anymore, and the councils have been causing these issues to double. Now, as I said to the gentleman that called me, it's very obvious that you don't have any expertise in Lantana, because the fact that you've doubled it in the last 10 years is living testimony to exactly how critically incompetent the whole system has been. The management of the system, this constant saying, oh, but we have processes in place. Well, they're completely inadequate if you've doubled it. 5 million hectares was not an insignificant number. 10 million plus hectares is a completely outrageous number, and there is no volume related systems in place. Now, my unique abilities in being able to understand where Lantana cannot be allowed to grow is reflected that the council has no concept of that that understanding, and that's what we sell ourselves as consultants, to be able to map out those areas and then map out the actual eradication programs. We aren't a Lantana vegetation company. We eradicate Lantana. We don't buy it a drink, we don't manage it, we don't do anything nice with it, we just eradicate it. And we do that little damage while we're eradicating it. We are unique completely. The fact that we can get into 20 and 30 degree slopes and leave the leaf litter still sitting on those surfaces is unique. But we're not coming to you with our hat in our hand begging for a job to compete with somebody else. There's enough processes within the councils that is absolutely corrupt, where organisations are utilised under the $50,000 and lower systems, that the works programs are completely ineffectual. And that's through parks sections, that's through all sections of the system, and that needs to be changed across all councils. That's not just specific to Brisbane City Council or Moreton Bay Regional or any of the others locally. That's actually a council issue across the whole broad spectrum of it. But Brisbane City Council has massive issues with these weeds all through these different suburbs, and it's no longer acceptable to say, well, we're going to support this suburb and we're going to just write these other ones off. I understand that saying writing suburbs off is a very unpopular term, but it's actually factually what's happening. And in actual fact, some of the things that you've completely missed about this whole process is that where those suburbs are being inundated even worse, actually you'll probably find, and I'll be able to map that out for you, they actually are the ones we need to be targeting, because most of those areas will have a higher volume rate of expansion because they actually are being left in high volume areas that the councils and the state government have not a clue as to why this explosion has happened as badly as it's happened. The places that councils have ceased operations are the places that must be targeted. They cannot be left there. You have no idea of how bad or how big a bomb you've created by turning your back on those environments. I discussed this with that person who contacted me, and they never sent their details through. But they say that the council relies on bush regenerators as their means of communication of what they should or shouldn't be doing, or where they should be going, or procedures. You've doubled the thing in 10 years. It would say that you are following the wrong path. You are following the wrong people. I not only have the ability to be able to predict where the Lantana has to be removed from, where it will show up even worse as a result of where you have it, but also I have the unique operational skill to be able to physically eradicate and remove that material. That's unique to this whole system. I'm not the person coming to you begging for a job. I'm the person you must employ to map out the strategies in the future to be able to get these things back to the point that we are meeting the growth rate. If you are not meeting the growth rate of this material in your shire, in your Brisbane City Council electorate, then you are failing. And that's across our nation. Every council that are not meeting their growth rates within their council electorates, they are failing. And they cannot afford to keep failing. And the state government cannot afford to keep turning a blind eye and pretending this doesn't exist. The federal government cannot keep turning a blind eye and going, we don't want to hear about this, because it's very unsettling for our voters. This is going to get far worse as this keeps progressing, and there is only one option forward, and that is to employ us as the people who go after these materials, map out these terrains that must be annihilated. They cannot be allowed to occupy those surfaces, and that's what the Brisbane City Council and all other processes of this have no clue about. This was never about picking a fight to go, we need to protect this, asset protection zone. This was completely incorrect. We need to be kicking the legs out from under Lantana, where it's getting the ultimate amount of growth. That's what we need to be targeting. Then we can go back and protect specific targets. But you have millions of specific sites throughout southeast Queensland that this material is just being given the having petrol thrown over it. That's what it's basically doing, and exploding in its growth rate. And those growth rates that I let out there, you might want to have a look at that video in Lantana Facts number 1 and 2. That's why we have to be employed. That's why we need to give those things to the council, so that we can map out the targeting of these specific high value areas and go after them with a vengeance. It's not a case of you're competing for some of these jobs. This level of this expansion is that critical that the state and federal government are going to have to step up. They're going to have to. It's that bad that public opinion very soon is going to be that bad that councils won't be voted back in again. You can forget that. Moreton Bay Regional Council, all the councillors have actually been contacted throughout Moreton Bay Regional Council, and they've had every part of this information that you're being given to them, and this video will be given to them as well. None of these people can turn a blind eye to how all of these suburbs are being inundated. All of Brookfield is absolutely a disaster. Moggle, it just goes on and on, all the way to the Ipswich border. It is just a disaster. And the fact that the council then goes and attacks residents, right, and hands them paperwork and talk and documents listing the thing as noxious again. This inconsistency of these approaches stops the individual landholders and ratepayers from actually taking action on their own lands to support the councils. And the councils should be adequately supporting those people who are taking actions, and that has not been done. But sir, you have Lantana growing in the bottom of watercourses and down all sorts of terrain that it can never be allowed to be. Now, I have an enormous Facebook presence that people are coming to me. We're reaching about 50,000 to 100,000 people per month, and within that organisation they are sharing the hell out of this information across the country, to the point now that I inspire so many people to fly drones that people are going out and buying drones, and then they're contacting me and saying, listen, how about we go and have a fly all around the Brisbane electorate, and we start filming this Lantana in the bottom of these drains, in the bottom of all of these watercourses, and we start to post that information ourselves. This is how big a disaster this is going to be for the state government, for the federal government, and for the councils. And it's only just beginning. And it's an out of control situation. If this keeps continuing because there's no action being taken, this will have catastrophic effects for the councils very shortly, and the state and for the federal government immediately. The next election is going to be a disaster, because the amount of information to be posted that's already been filmed is nothing to what's going to be filmed very shortly, because now I have such a wide, broad-based community support that those individual people are going to be putting that information up there. We need to be taking proactive standpoints from main roads, councils, South East Queensland Water, and we need to be filming and mapping these things out so we can categorically measure the amount of material moved and work towards reaching that critical mass of the growth rate. Anything less than that, we are losing our state and we're losing our nation. And this is such a serious subject that we've had animals put on property that are, 60 and 80% infested. And the welfare of those animals, it takes councils weeks to write back, weeks to respond. The Department of Agriculture and Forestry takes them 2 days to respond. But still, they aren't willing to go to site and inspect those situations. They aren't willing to tell who owns the land, being that it's not private citizens, it's either national parks or it's South East Queensland Water. This is what I'm battling, and this is what you have on your plate. This is as serious as a heart attack, this stuff. And those levels of those infestations will not go into next year just being ignored and being allowed to continue on that basis. So I suggest that it's a very important thing to employ us as consultants and go after mapping out the exact levels of these materials. And as that person that contacted me, who I have no idea who he is, said that the council's relying on some information from some small birds group that too much Lantana was removed from any particular place. We have 10 million hectares of this material in our state, in our country. We cannot keep allowing this to continue to grow like that. I have film footage that shows that there's nothing utilising this material. There's nothing lower forestry level using this material. The leaf litter has never been disturbed for years and years and years. So trying to muddy the waters by pretending that some small group lobbies a council the size of Brisbane City Council and that affects them doing their legal responsibility. You are not allowed to release Lantana to the environment. Go change that law, or ask the federal and state government to change the law, and I'll see where you end up, and I'll see where they end up. What has been done to our country is criminal so far. It is actually illegal. The council has acknowledged that they're aware that this is illegal to release this material to the environment, but they've done it for 20 to 30 years. And then their proteges came here. That we sat and spoke to them, and they said that there's zero Lantana being targeted. It's finished with. It's low risk. Again, I put the question to you. Provide me with the details of who gave that to you and said it was low risk. What department? Who attended those meetings? And where was that decision made? And what did they rely on as low risk? Because I can tell you now, the Australian public are never going to accept that it's low risk with those growth rates or the fact that it's on record as having killed people. But there's no more being able to hide and pretend this doesn't exist. This is actually directly to you, Mr. Quirk. I want the proper responses to these things. I want the answers to that. Or we want to go after this material. Take your pick which way you want to go. But this is not going to continue on this ecological disaster that it has been for so long, that our shires and our states right across the Brisbane City Council electorate is that badly infested with this material, and there's a second set of rules that affect the ratepayers. It's not going to continue. We need to be supporting the people who will do the work, and then go after the situation where we need to help the other people do the right thing. And that includes councils, that includes state government. We cannot keep pretending this is not a serious issue, because this is our children's future and our children's children's future. And this was done illegally. And that jig is up. It cannot continue. It does not matter how that process goes. I don't care if you have to pass the hat around from council to council to put the funding on the table for us to go after this material in the manner that it must be. 2 million trees is a waste of time when you allowed this material to grow to the levels you have and you've turned a blind eye to it. It cannot be allowed to be doing that, especially where you have it growing. And the fact that your council does not know that that's absolutely illegal to have it growing in those areas and being released and flushed downstream to all of those watercourses and people below downstream. That cannot be allowed to happen. It's illegal. It should never have been allowed to happen. It actually is illegal for it to have ever happened. And it wouldn't matter if the government had changed that ranking on classification. It wouldn't have mattered. But that we need that information too. If they've done the wrong thing, by all means, pass that information on to me and I'll go after that source. It's criminal what they've done to our citizens. And it can't be tolerated. If you're not responsible, that's fine. Pass on the next person that was up the chain that did that. If it's not your fault or your problem, then don't take the heat for it. But we have to have proper eradication programs in place, specifically targeting those specific areas that cannot be allowed to grow. And I'm the only one in the country that has both the mechanical ability to remove it and the understanding of how to do that and reach eradication levels, and also to know how we're going to logistically achieve these results. That makes it far cheaper than all of the systems that you're doing and the corruption that exists within the parks, within these small contract levels. So that's where we're up to. Look, I've seen, Mr. Quirk, how corrupt the council systems are through Brisbane City Council, through Moreton Bay Regional Council, through some of these other councils. The ground-based programs that are run by the teams on the ground that accept small gifts from contractors. You know, I've seen that firsthand. It can't continue on that basis. This serious nature of the level of these infestations has to be dealt with. It cannot be allowed to continue and be manipulated by those things. So we have to all band together and get very serious about how we target these materials from these areas. What we offer the council for the first time is to specifically be able to map out targeting of these high value areas that the material is most productive in, and then to map out the targeting to eradicate those materials with the least damage to the ecology. But we cannot pretend and misrepresent using government funded not-for-profit organisations to say, oh well, that might upset some animal here that doesn't even exist in that environment. It's been used too much and it can't continue to be used in that way. Nor can we continue to use the land care program where you slash and paint the material and it turns the whole ecosystem into a desert. You know, there's places there that are 18 months old that are complete deserts under that system. They poison the mycorrhizal fungi subsoil system and kill all the subsoil life, and that's in watercourses. And that's what we're said, oh no, that's okay, that's not too bad. It cannot keep continuing. We have to have accountability at the highest levels that we seriously go after this. This could be the worst political nightmare in the history of our country, or it could be the most community joining, banding topic that ever existed, because the benefits that come from us actually going after these materials unites the whole community. It unites the whole Brisbane City Council community, the Moreton Bay Regional community, the whole of the Queensland, the whole of New South Wales and Queensland, the whole of the country. Our children are paying these prices already for what was done before. But we shouldn't be shirking away from those responsibilities because the job is big. And because the government never had access to a team of individuals who specifically are the workforce. Nothing like us has ever existed before with the knowledge that we have and the abilities to operate within those terrains. And there's even terrains that are outside of that ability. But the catastrophic event of those materials being left on those surfaces is that large. It's not a case of saying it's too costly to go after it. It's too costly not to deal with it. At 3,600 plants from a single plant where they're given access to water all year round is not something you can pretend doesn't happen. And it's happening in your watercourses. And you are responsible for everybody that's being infested downstream. We either act on this, or the litigation nightmare that comes from it is going to be far worse than any of the costs that you can imagine in having paid to deal with this problem. You know, I understand how corrupt that system is that I started to say about the parks and wildlife parks section and the utilising under $50,000 contracts. You know, it's the same system that gets used by people like ourselves coming into council, that the council can either ignore to check every single dot and dot every I and cross every T where they want to have somebody come into council, or they can support the person and have them helped to be able to achieve those results. But where you have specific individual abilities that don't exist anywhere else, and the foe is so catastrophically dangerous, we cannot keep pretending anymore. And I can't be nice about this and leave this open for large periods of time. We are running to the next election, and we are going to see some very serious changes. And the elections after that, whether they're council elections or they're state government elections, this topic is just going to explode from this point. We're going to be filming from the whole of the country. There are that many people now with drones and wanting to become a part of this, that it then makes it not a problem. I'm not having to try and travel everywhere and film all this stuff. And the amount of volume of filming is going to make this a very, very, very bad subject. And the quality of the filming and the types of environments that are going to be filmed in, because they are natural ecosystems being destroyed by council illegal activities. We must stop this material being released to the environment, and the council has known that all along. So it has to be eradicated. It cannot be left there. Now, we either do that in a staged and targeted approach of the highest value targets first and work our way through that list, or we just open the floodgates to litigation, to compensation, to damages, and to the public's opinion on the ecology and what's been done to it. It really isn't my choice. It's up to you guys whether you're going to do the right thing and you're going to effectively go after this, or you end up with the public campaign for however long it takes. It doesn't matter. This has got nothing else that I'm interested in except getting Lantana eradicated, and on a very large scale, you know. So it's up to you. So please get your guys to contact me again, because I don't have any numbers, or contact me yourself. I would happily show you around and show you some of the reasons why this must change, because it has to be understood, and we have to be seen to be doing the right thing, so we then invigorate the public and the community to become a part of this groundswell, and we help them to then do the rehabilitation, to cut the costs back on us, to cut the costs back on the whole of the government infrastructure. My whole job, my whole mission is to become that voice for the people, and that unity of education, that everybody understands how bad the foe is. You're not the foe. I don't believe you're the foe. But unfortunately, you're not helping the situation by funding and supporting these things. I have to get the people to stand up and recognize exactly how deadly all of the weeds are. While we're killing Lantana, we will be taking down masses of different weeds in that whole process. It's about getting people out into the streets and invigorated to make a difference to our ecology and to our children's future. So we either band together or we're on different pages, and unfortunately it's not going to be a very good place to be on the other page, because unfortunately the amount of evidence and the amount of material out there is staggering, and it's not going to be something that you can pretend it doesn't exist very soon, and the public won't be very happy about the levels that are out there. So thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry that I have to keep doing this. I would have thought that at some stage, just the sheer morality of the level of this problem, and look, to be honest, if you don't understand that, okay, and I don't mean that as a derogatory thing, if your people that are in your teams aren't able to show you the levels of this and why it's such a big deal, then you need to be paying us as consultants to be able to convey that. You need to be able to see that. And if the councils are eradicating the material on the sides of the roads and in the watercourses and on their lands, then it's easy to say to the rest of the public, we need you guys to step up and we need you guys to take it seriously too. Because all of us, every living being on our continent has a place in this. We are all under the same situation. So thank you very much for your time. I'm Gary from Lantana Removal, Queensland. Again, we operate out of Narangba, and we travel all over the state, and we'll travel all over the country as needed. And we eradicate Lantana, and we're consultants and becoming professional lobbyists to see this through until these things are changed and we have a proper national works program across the nation. And the first councils, the first governments, the first parts of these departments to support us are going to be the ones that end up on the good side of public opinion, and the rest are going to end up having a very bad day, just like the cancer that they're increasing. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.